Hi everyone, welcome to Futama TV, a TV where we learn, we solve, and we thrive. Now today I will be introducing us to MTS 104. But before I start, my name is Adu Samson, and I'll be your tutor through the journey of MTS 104. Now MTS 104 is titled Introduction Applied Mathematics, and these are the content of the course. Now in section A, we'll be introduced to what vectors are. In section 2, we'll be introduced to the applications of vector. And section 3, we'll be introduced to the geometrics of cycle. And 4, we talk about conic section. And 5, we talk about the dynamic one. And the 6th, we talk about the dynamics 2. Now, for today's class, we will be starting with what introduction to vectors are. Now, from our fundamental knowledge of physics, the word vector should not be a new thing, right? Now let's get to know what vector is together. Know that vectors are regarded as a quantity in physics. Now, vectors are regarded as quantities that has both magnitude and direction. Now, vectors are defined. Vectors are quantities which has both magnitude and direction. Now, what does the word magnitude mean and its direction? Now, the word magnitude means something that is scalable, that is measurable, that can be quantified. For instance, 5. This is a magnitude. But direction comes in place when it moves in a direction. Direction, the extent of which something moves. Are you with me? Now, that implies that any quantity that possesses or has magnitude and direction is regarded as a vector. Now, vectors are represented with an arrowhead. Vectors are represented with an arrowhead. E.g. vector. Now, this is representing vector V. Now, the arrowhead above it shows the direction of the vector, while this shows the quantity. Now, having know what vectors are, we also have to understand the dimensions of vector. Now, dimensions of vector. Now, what do we refer as dimension? Dimension simply means the extent to which a body moves towards a specified direction. Now, that is, if the dimension of a vector is 1, it moves with regards to one direction. While when you hear the word two-dimensional vectors, are vectors that moves with respect to two different directions. And when you hear the word 3D dimensions, that's 3D, or you hear the word 3 dimensions, the D means dimensions, means that the vector travels with regard to 3 different directions. Is that clear? Now, for the case of this class, we will only discuss about a 1 direction, that is 1 dimension, 2 dimension, and 3 dimension. Now, the first one, a 1 dimension vector. When you hear the word 1 dimension, with what I've explained, a 1 dimension vector is a vector that travels with regard or with respect to one direction. It is written this way: vector A, for instance, and it is regardless, we can use the symbol I. So this symbol I shows that it moves with respect with the x coordinate. I is represented that it moves only with the x what coordinate on the Cartesian plane. Right? When you hear the word two dimension, simply means it travels across two different dimensions. Now, when we want to write that, vector A can now be written as AI plus BJ. Now, when this A, this I, and this B represent the direction towards the coordinate, towards its direction, where A and B represent the magnitude. That is why we define vectors as quantity that has both magnitude and direction. Now, this simply means that this vector has traveled with respect to x and the y axis. It travels to the x and the y axis. And when you hear the word three dimensions, the word three dimensions simply means it travels with three dimensions, isn't it? Three-dimensional vectors. So that means if you are really regarding that, that becomes AI plus BJ plus CK. So when you see IJK, means it travels across three different dimensions, which could be the x, the y, and the z axis. Exactly. Now, let's talk more about dimensions. Are you ready to know what about dimensions? And let's get to see dimensions. Don't forget that one dimension means it moves with respect to one direction. Two dimension means you extend to two different dimensions. While three dimensions means with extend to three different dimensions. And notice the symbol that which we write them with. Is that clear? Great. Now, the question says identify the dimension of the following vectors. Now, vector A is what? You can pause the video and tell the answer. Now, vector A is a one-dimensional vector, right? One-dimensional vector. Why? Because it contains one dimension, I, that is with respect to the x-axis. Now B has I and J. That means it is direction is being taken with respect to the I and J. That means a two-dimensional vector, right? A two-dimensional vector. Now the C has I, J, K. Now since it has I, J, K, then it is what? A three-dimensional vector, isn't it? A three-dimensional vector. And lastly is what? What's your answer? Lastly, it contains I and K. Now, because it contains I and K, before it can contain I and K, I can still write this as 2I plus 0J plus, minus 3K. So, because it has moved in this direction, Z, it possesses this also. Are you with me? So as long as it contains K, I and K, it doesn't mean it is a two-dimension. This is a three-dimensional vector. So this is where we stop for this class. Thank you. If you actually love the video, you can click on the subscribe button to get more information as we journey MTS 104. Thank you for